Welcome to another Business Spotlight. My name's Kerry James. I'm a business coach and a facilitator. And on Business Spotlights, we always share reflections, lessons, pearls of wisdom from local business owners. And on today's session, I'm delighted to welcome Hemant Patel, founder of Anumana. Good afternoon to you, Hemant.
Good afternoon, Kerry. Great to meet you.
Glad to have you here. Glad to have you here. So Anumana, an intriguing name for a business, doesn't give anything away, or certainly didn't to me, based on what I'd understood from the word. So please give us a little bit of a flavor. How long have you been in business and what you specialize in, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess to touch on your comment about the intriguing name, I might as well start with that. So the name itself is a Sanskrit word, an ancient Indian language. I wanted to bring part of my heritage into the business and have some sort of identity from that perspective. And it means where past truths are used to form a new truth, which effectively is the purpose of analytics. And that's ultimately where we are as a business. So our raison d'etre is that we want to transform businesses' data into an asset. And we do that through either digital transformation programs, where they can consume and embed modern technologies to enhance their decision making, or building custom built AI products. So taking key business processes or key decision points to develop bespoke tooling for a business, ultimately in the objective of generating revenue increment or increasing process and business efficiency.
Right. Okay. So what's the balance of kind of helping clients automate processes and developing bespoke AI tools?
I mean, at the moment, it's pretty 50-50.
Yeah.
Usually, where my background is heavily analytics led, and ultimately the interesting and more exciting elements, as you'd imagine, are of the building of the actual AI and machine learning. If I'm going to be a bit of a prudent on things, but to be able to get to that position, you have to have a solid foundation, and ultimately the digital transformation are the steps that businesses need to take to be able to get themselves to a position where they can benefit from the use of AI. So we kind of have developed those two solutions for businesses ultimately to help them progress through the maturity curve.
And so would the target clients or prospective clients or ideal clients, would they be very different for system automation and AI tools, or would they be similar?
They're different in the sense of their data maturity. So ultimately, clients that we can progress with developing machine learning and AI models at this current point in time are most likely to have already been through a digital transformation. However, those where we're leading with the digital transformation, ultimately we have an objective in our minds that we want to progress them to the point of machine learning and AI. So it's just there's always that same objective for us, that we want to expose them to the benefits of advanced analytics, but that journey starts at a different point.
Okay, so level of digital maturity is kind of one factor, but give us a bit more of a flavor of ideal client, whether it's sector or culture or, I don't know, size of business. So what might be an ideal client?
Yeah, I mean, the ideal client for us is more about that the appetite. It's their maturity towards data and analytics. They are usually businesses that have scale, and with scale comes we're ultimately looking for what we call an optimization problem. That's where analytics is really at its greatest impact. And an optimization problem is ultimately something where there is some sort of scale, whether it's customers, data, processes, there's some sort of scale at decision making, which leads you to a position where manually making a decision or being acted upon instinct or experience isn't suitable enough for actually getting to the most optimal outcome. And that's where analytics usually lends itself to becoming a more appropriate and financially rewarding objective.
What might be a good example to bring this maybe a little
Yep.
bit more relatable to the viewers of Business Spotlight? What might be a good example, obviously without getting involved in any issues around confidentiality, Hemant, but what might be an example you'd be prepared to share?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll share two examples. One example is the more sort of generic example that I like to give is if you take a call center, any call center usually has an optimization problem. Ultimately, they have a significant number of customers that they're looking to get in contact with, but don't have the ability to understand on a individual basis who the right person to contact is at any one time. And there are multiple different factors to that. So you've got who should we contact? What channel of communication should we use to contact them? What time of day should we contact them? And what sort of the right communication style should we contact them with? And within those four different data points, if you've got, say, 10,000 customers, but only the ability to contact 1,000 customers on a given day, you're starting to get into millions of iterations of possible outcomes that you need to decide upon to be able to pick the best outcome to maximize your success in that given day. And that's where the optimization problem comes in. We use machine learning to basically say that build a model that gives the best likelihood of any of those different iterations for a specific for the best outcome, which clearly you need computer power to be able to analyze. And the more relevant example for what we're doing at the moment is we're starting working with a couple of manufacturing businesses. And what we've identified is the production planning process seems to be a commonality between manufacturing businesses where they get to a point where they're Excel spreadsheet driven, they're in a process where they operate in silos between the planning, the sales, and the supply chain. And there's an opportunity to use data to streamline and automate the process, but then use analytics to identify, well, what's the optimal production plan to maximize return dependent on supply, demand, and operational effectiveness of the warehouse or the manufacturing site.
Interesting. Okay, very good. So, and how long did you say the business had been going? Sorry, Hemant.
So we're coming up to 3 years.
Okay.
So very much in our startup phase. The first couple of years were, I guess, finding our identity and understanding exactly what we were as a business. And over the last year, we've been going through a bit of a pivot, and we're about to relaunch and really focusing on these two propositions and that transformation of data into an asset.
So about 3 years ago. So that was interesting. So that was kind of right in the middle of COVID, or a
Yeah.
year into
Yeah.
after the first lockdown, if you like. So
Yeah.
one of the things I heard during COVID was that the digital revolution moved on 5 years in 5 months.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that that context is obviously relevant to your business. So whether it's home working or interest rates or inflation or that the whole revolution around AI, how have all those factors impacted either your choice to launch the business or the overall industry that you're working in?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. One of the reasons I chose to launch the business was actually I've got two young daughters, and they were at the time they were 6 months and 2.5 years old. And I guess contrary to popular belief, for me, starting up my own business was an opportunity to take more control over my time and be present. And I set the business to have success, but to really be more present with my children. And it was obviously it was the right time for me, having gone through the COVID experience and really been in a position to reassess my priorities. Obviously, fortunately, being in the analytics space and being in the AI space, I'm in a position where this industry is only continuing to grow, continues to become more prominent, and that gave strength to the decision to take it on at the right time. I mean, growing a business from scratch isn't easy, so I can't sit here and lie and say that it's been an easy ride, but it certainly hasn't. However, the challenge hasn't been necessarily is there business out there? It's been more about how we go about presenting ourselves to obtain that business. There's plenty of opportunity out there, and mostly it's businesses are waking up and starting to begin to understand that data and analytics could be relevant for them. And what we're trying to do is be part of that, changing their belief around data and analytics so that we can really present ourselves at the right time in the right conversation, and when they're ready to use and consume data and analytics, we can help them on that journey.
So prior to 2021 then, Hemant, were you in a kind of a technical specialist role, or what were you doing before?
Yeah, so prior to Anumana, I helped set up the operations of another business called Azure Associates. I joined that business on day one, so that was 7 years ago, and built out the data and analytics function. So built out the technological function there. I was analytics director of that organization, and I mean there was two of us in Manchester and the CEO in London, and at the time we were in a small 2-3 person office with our own laptops, and we when I left the business, it was 50 plus strong, with using the most cutting edge technology within the industry. We'd brought cloud computing to to the financial services industry, the niche area that we were working in, and we had built some of the most complex machine learning models in the industry, not for vanity's sake, but that was our mechanism to be competitive, which we were able to. So that was the experience that was fantastic, that I'd wanted to replicate and offer to other businesses. I believe analytics it should be accessible for all businesses. It's beneficial for all businesses, but it is so technical and sort of ambiguous and nebulous a topic that it puts off a lot of businesses from really approaching it and benefiting it. And I guess my objective and my goal is that most, if not all, businesses can use and consume some form of analytics for their betterment.
Absolutely, and in relation to the current challenges, you mentioned the management of people's beliefs around AI, etc. But given where you are now, Hemant, and where you're trying to get to as a business, what else are the key challenges, would you say, today?
I think for us as a business, because it's such a demand area, we need to find our niche within a complex and technical environment. And for me, that's focused around how we operate rather than sort of what we're actually doing, if that makes sense. It's more around sort of our ethos and our service, and ensuring that that's a point of differentiation. And by that, one of the key focal points for us, I mean, I was never a consultant. I've not come from a consultancy background, so starting up a consultancy is probably an odd choice of a business model for a new business if I've not got that experience. And some of the factors of consultancy didn't really align with me. I think there's a lot of the experiences previous on a client side where we'd had consultancies ingrain themselves into the business and effectively become a dependency, and almost there was always words of virus and leech, and it was all negative connotations. And I felt that was lend itself to that consultancy model of let's become the experts and ensure that the business is dependent on our expertise. So for me, I wanted to change that. And one of the things that we do at Anumana is that we upskill the businesses that we work with. Our objective is for the business to no longer need us. We take them through a growth phase and a development phase, and we give them the skills and learning as we're going through that phase to get them to the point where they become self-sufficient, effectively doing ourselves out of a job, which is counterintuitive for a profitability perspective because, well, we're fixing our revenue earning time frame. But for me, that was, I wanted to create a better product, and I feel that's how we differentiate ourselves and ensure that we remain relevant going forward.
Or maybe bad news from a short-term profit perspective, but probably very good news from a long-term profit perspective.
That's the intention. That's the hope.
And okay, and what about aspirations then for Anumana? Where do you see yourself in 5 years, let's say?
Yeah, so we've got as I say, we're relaunching in the next couple of months. We've done well. We've survived over the last few years, so which I think what the stats are, 60% of businesses survive in the first 3 years, so or vice versa. We're around there, so we've got to that point. But survival isn't good enough for the next 3 years. So now that we've gone past that point, we've identified exactly what we are as a business. We now want to establish ourselves and thrive. So the next few years are about growth, building out the team, getting a presence, sort of establishing ourselves in certain verticals, manufacturing, legal, and retail being the three verticals that we want to create a specific name for ourselves in. And hopefully that gives us the platform to be able to then establish a wider geographical presence. We're focused predominantly in the UK at the moment, and that's fine for now. But in 5 years' time, I'd like to be in a position where we can support businesses outside of the UK or those that have multi geographical presence.
Very good. Excellent.
I guess one other area that I've not discussed is that part of establishing the business, I wanted a business that wasn't just purely profit driven. And one of the aspects of our business, we've got something called the Anumana Code Academy, which is a not-for-profit program where we go into schools around Manchester and teach disadvantaged children Python. And the objective of that is to promote or create opportunities for children that may not have the necessary needs or means or background for it. And at the moment, we're in 7 schools around Manchester teaching around 100 children Python. In 5 years' time, my objective will be that it's a national program, and that we have at least 1,000 children each year going through it. So that's a very clear
Excuse
objective.
my ignorance, Hemant. Can I guess right that Python is not talking like a snake, but it's a coding language? Is that right? And why is that particularly the chosen language for school children?
Yeah, so Python is currently the most popular programming language in the world. I was looking at some statistics. Take Facebook as an example. Obviously, they're one of the most prevalent employers of technical roles. 75% of the roles that they had available at any one time in the technical space had Python as a mandatory. The next most popular was SQL at 25%. So it's a very in-demand language. Also, from my experience, I'm aware, I know that Python is a very transient language. It's accessible. It gives you a platform to do many different types of roles. It doesn't necessarily pigeonhole yourself into an engineering role or an analytics role. It gives you accessibility across a wide range of vocations. So it's a great starting point for being able to move into a technical profession.
Very good. Well, there you go. Every day is a school day, as they say. Thanks for sharing that with me. So, on to the maybe the most interesting, challenging question. I guess you talked about your background not being in consultancy and
Yeah.
having the technical analytical director's role. So since you started Anumana, what do you think have been the key learning points for you as you've moved into the business owner role?
Yeah. It's I think the biggest learning for me in building this business is that irrespective of the skill set that we have, um, being able to appropriately articulate what we do and find a mechanism of being able to translate our skill set into a really neat, saleable product has been the biggest challenge. If we wanted to just survive, we would remain as a bootstrapped, pure play data analytics consultancy. But to really grow the business, we've had to work hard at reinventing ourselves, and we've probably reinvented ourselves like 10 times in the last 2-3 years, trying to find exactly what that optimal articulation is. And I'm not saying that we've got it, but I feel a lot more confident about what we are doing and how we're doing it now than I was a year ago or 2 years ago, and that's been quite a challenging process. And we've invested a lot of time and money into that, but that's now starting to pay dividends and giving us a much better process. The actual work itself and the skills that we're using are exactly the same, but the way that we've packaged it up and the way that we're promoting it has transformed significantly over the 2 to 3 year period.
Right. So it's kind of crystallizing your value, packaging that, expressing that in a way that's meaningful and relevant to
Yeah.
some of, I'm sure that some of the people you deal with, quite a complicated decision-making unit, right? So I guess
Yeah.
simplifying what you do and expressing it is a key element.
Most of our prospective clients, most of our clients are non-technical individuals, and what we do is very, very niche and technical. So how do you articulate what you do in a language that isn't the language that you use on a regular basis? You've got to basically create a new language to talk to the people that are going to be paying your bills at the end of the day, and that's the biggest problem, or the biggest challenge within our field.
Very good. Well, Hemant, thank you ever so much for sharing that learning and sharing your journey. One final question, maybe particularly from manufacturing or legal or retail, as you mentioned, if there's any business spotlight viewers interested in a follow-up conversation as to how you might be able to help them automate and add value to their businesses, what might be a sensible next step?
Yeah, just reaching out to me directly. I'm on LinkedIn. I'll share my email I'm sure on the video as well. So just get in touch with me, and we'll have a very friendly and non-technical conversation about how we can potentially support. As I say, in the next couple of months, we'll be relaunching the website, and our engagement process will be much more straightforward from that point in time.
Very good.
I'll still be accessible directly.
Well, we will add that website URL to the videos that come out from today, Hemant. And once again, thanks ever so much for your time, for sharing your story, for educating me about Python, and all the very best with Anumana.
Thank you very much, Kerry.
All the best. See you soon. Bye for now.